The Economy of Machinery and Manufactures by Charles Babbage 1832. Chapter 6. Saving Time in Natural Operations. 47. The process of tanning will furnish us with a striking illustration of the power of machinery in accelerating certain processes in which natural operations have a principal effect. The object of this art is to combine the certain principle called tanning with every particle of the skins to be tanned. This, in the ordinary process, is accomplished by allowing the skins to soak in pits containing a solution of tanning matter. They remain in the pits 6, 12, or 18 months, and in some instances if the hides are very thick they are exposed to the operation for 2 years, or even during a longer period. This length of time is apparently required in order to allow the tanning matter to penetrate into the interior of a thick hide. The improved process consists in placing the hides with the solution of tan in close vessels, and then exhausting the air. The effect is to withdraw any air which may be contained in the pores of the hides, and to aid capillary attraction by the pressure of the atmosphere in forcing the tan into the interior of the skins. The effect of the additional force thus brought into action can be equal only to 1 atmosphere, but a further improvement has been made. The vessel containing the hides is, after exhaustion, filled up with a solution of tan. A small additional quantity is then injected with a forcing pump. By these means any degree of pressure may be given which the containing vessel is capable of supporting, and it has been found that, by employing such a method, the thickest hides may be tanned in 6 weeks or 2 months. 48. The same process of injection might be applied to impregnate timber with tar, or any other substance capable of preserving it from decay. And if it were not too expensive, the deal floors of houses might thus be impregnated with aluminum or other substances, which would render them much less liable to be accidentally set on fire. In some cases it might be useful to impregnate woods with resins, varnish, or oil, and wood saturated with oil might, in some instances, be usefully employed in machinery for giving a constant, but very minute supply of that fluid to iron or steel, against which it is worked. Some idea of the quantity of matter which can be injected into wood by great pressure may be formed from considering the fact stated by Mr. Scoresby respecting an accident which occurred to a boat of one of our whaling ships. The harpoon having been struck into the fish, the whale in this instance dived directly down, and carried the boat along with him. On returning to the surface the animal was killed, but the boat, instead of rising, was found suspended beneath the whale by the rope of the harpoon, and on drawing it up, every part of the wood was found to be so completely saturated with water as to sink immediately to the bottom. 49. The operation of bleaching linen in the open air is one for which considerable time is necessary, and although it does not require much labor, yet, from the risk of damage and of robbery from long exposure, the mode of shortening the process was highly desirable. The method now practiced, although not mechanical, is such a remarkable instance of the application of science to the practical purposes of manufactures, that in mentioning the advantages derived from shortening natural operations, it would have been scarcely pardonable to have omitted all allusion to the beautiful application of chlorine, in combination with lime, to the art of bleaching. 50. Another instance more strictly mechanical occurs in some countries where fuel is expensive, and the heat of the sun is not sufficient to evaporate the water from brine springs. The water is first pumped up to a reservoir, and then allowed to fall in small streams through faggots. Thus it becomes divided, and, presenting a large surface, evaporation is facilitated, and the brine which is collected in the vessels below the faggots is stronger than that which was pumped up. After thus getting rid of a large part of the water, the remaining portion is driven off by boiling. The success of this process depends on the condition of the atmosphere with respect to moisture. If the air, at the time the brine falls through the faggots, hold in solution as much moisture as it can contain in an invisible state, no more can be absorbed from the salt water, and the labor expended in pumping is entirely wasted. The state of the air, as to dryness, is therefore an important consideration in fixing the time when this operation is to be performed, and an attentive examination of its state, by means of the hygrometer, might be productive of some economy of labor. 51. In some countries, where wood is scarce, the evaporation of salt water is carried on by a large collection of ropes which are stretched perpendicularly. In passing down the ropes, the water deposits the sulfate of lime which it held in solution, and gradually encrusts them. so that in the course of 20 years, when they are nearly rotten, they are still sustained by the surrounding incrustation, thus presenting the appearance of a vast collection of small columns. 52. Amongst natural operations perpetually altering the surface of our globe, there are some which it would be advantageous to accelerate. The wearing down of the rocks which impede the rapids of navigable rivers, is one of this class. A very beautiful process for accomplishing this object has been employed in America. The boat is placed at the bottom of the rapid, and kept in its position by a long rope which is firmly fixed on the bank of the river near the top. An axis, having the wheel similar to the paddle wheel of a steamboat fixed at each end of it, is placed across the boat, so that the two wheels and their connecting axis shall revolve rapidly, being driven by the force of the passing current. Let us now imagine several beams of wood shod with pointed iron fixed at the ends of strong levers, projecting beyond the bow of the boat, as in the annexed representation. If these levers are at liberty to move up and down, and if one or more projecting pieces, called cams, are fixed on the axis opposite to the end of each lever, the action of the stream upon the wheels will keep up the perpetual succession of blows. The sharp pointed shoes striking upon the rock at the bottom, will continually detach small pieces, which the stream will immediately carry off. Thus, by the mere action of the river itself, a constant and most effectual system of pounding the rock at its bottom is established. A single workman may, by the aid of the rudder, direct the boat to any required part of the stream, and when it is necessary to move up the rapid, as the channel is cut, he can easily cause the boat to advance by means of a capstan. 53. When the object of the machinery just described has been accomplished, and the channel is sufficiently deep, a slight alteration converts the apparatus to another purpose almost equally advantageous. The stampers and the projecting pieces on the axis are removed, and a barrel of wood or metal, surrounding part of the axis, and capable, that pleasure, of being connected with, or disconnected from the axis itself, is substituted. The rope which hitherto fastened the boat, is now fixed to this barrel, and if the barrel is loose upon the axis, the paddle wheel makes the axis only revolve, and the boat remains in its place, but the moment the axis is attached to its surrounding barrel, this begins to turn, and winding up the rope, the boat is gradually drawn up against the stream, and may be employed as a kind of tugboat for vessels which have occasion to ascend the rapid. When the tugboat reaches the summit, the barrel is released from the axis, and friction being applied to moderate its velocity, the boat is allowed to descend. 54. Clocks occupy a very high place amongst instruments by means of which human time is economized, and their multiplication in conspicuous places in large towns is attended with many advantages. Their position, nevertheless, in London, is often very ill chosen, and the usual place, halfway up on a high steeple, in the midst of narrow streets, in a crowded city, is very unfavorable, unless the church happen to stand out from the houses which form the street. The most eligible situation for a clock is, that it should project considerably into the street at some elevation, with a dial plate on each side, like that which belonged to the old church of St. Dunstan, in Fleet Street, so that passengers in both directions would have their attention directed to the hour. 55. A similar remark applies, with much greater force, to the present defective mode of informing the public of the position of the receiving houses for the twopenny and general post. In the lowest corner of the window of some attractive shop is found a small slit, with a brass plate indicating its important office so obscurely, that it seems to be an object rather to prevent its being conspicuous. No striking sign assists the anxious inquirer, who, as the moments rapidly pass which precede the hour of closing, torments the passenger with his inquiries for the nearest post office. He reaches it, perhaps, just as it is closed, and must then either hasten to a distant part of the town in order to procure the admission of his letters, or give up the idea of forwarding them by that post, and thus, if they are foreign letters, he may lose, perhaps, a week or a fortnight by waiting for the next packet. The inconvenience in this and in some other cases, is of perpetual and everyday occurrence, and though, in the greater part of the individual cases, it may be of trifling moment, the sum of all these produces an amount, which it is always worthy of the government of a large and active population to attend to. The remedy is simple and obvious. It would only be necessary, at each letter box, to have a light frame of iron projecting from the house over the pavement, and carrying the letters GP, or T, P, or any other distinctive sign. All private signs are at present very properly prohibited from projecting into the street. The passenger, therefore, would at once know where to direct his attention, in order to discover a post office, and those letter boxes which occurred in the great thoroughfares could not fail to be generally known.